Okay, well, Andrea was working with multiplying different shapes. She was working with some scallops and some lacy edges and little leaf ornament, some small circles, and she was wondering, how do you determine the sizing? Her goal was to have a frame that measured 5 inches wide and 7 inches long. So I started working with the outside shape first, the scallops, and worked inward from there for placement. So I'll show you and talk through what I did. Now, the first thing I noticed is that she had 5 scallops across, along with the corners, which are kind of inset from the either side, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 scallops on the side, but the scallops are different size across the top than they were at the side, and that happens when you start resizing things non-proportionally. So I thought I would just show you what I did to create a similar design and how I go about figuring out measurements. A lot of those choices really are arbitrary, but based on what she wanted to do or what she'd already done, I created this look here, and I thought I'd just show you how I did that using her shapes. So when I want to do scalloped edges, I find that it's easiest for me just to start with circles. So I click on the basic shapes and type in CI for circle and double click on the circle to bring that in. And I'll switch to my green screen and look for that circle I just added here. It's always added where your carrot is, and my carrot was way out there, so if you seem to have lost it, you can always zoom in. Now, in order to get at least 5 across and to come close to 5 inches wide, I decided I better reduce this circle with the lock icon on, gold lock icon, and change the size to about 3/4 of an inch and press enter. And all of this can change. You can resize everything after you're done. The next thing I did was to go to duplicate and determined that I wanted 7 rows across, and in order to make it pretty close to the 7 inches I wanted, I needed to have 10 down. So also, in order to have the edges not for the edges of the scallops to overlap less drastically, I had the overlap at -0.05, and I like to keep these in increments of a 1 inch, ½ inch, in this case -0.05, because it'll help maintain the ratio of 5 to 7, but I want to have 7 of these across, actually 10 down and 7 across. So this is pretty near the size that I want. I can always resize, and I'll apply that. I could maybe make them overlap a little bit more, but then the scallops would be affected a little bit more. Now, she did indicate that she wanted these corners inset a little bit, and you could really change the corners to be however you wanted. I used my arrow keys and just tap them 3 times. If I wanted them more, I would do maybe 4 or 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. Would give me a little more inset. If you wanted to do even a couple more, you could. So maybe 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And same with the bottom corners, so that they're all equally spaced. Once I have those positioned, then I just select them all and weld. Now what this gives me is the look of the scallops, and if I don't like the way the corners look, I still could undo and redo again. I thought this was kind of an interesting look with, yes.
I think we're lagging here on your screen right now. At least what I'm seeing. Okay, it looks like you've just selected everything. So I think we have a little bit of lag in the screen. Looks like you just did the weld now. It's coming across on the screen. So if we lag too much, okay, I'll try to get your attention again. Go ahead.
This is an interesting look if you wanted diamond shapes, but since I don't really want diamond shapes, I'm going to click on the blackout, which is 8th icon from the left on the bottom toolbar, which removes all of those spacing in there. Now if you don't like it, again, you can undo and you can try the corners to be a little bit more inset or less as you like. Now also at this point I'm looking at the measurements and I see it's 5.95, pretty close to the 5 inches wide and pretty close to the 7 inches tall that I wanted. I could go ahead and change that to 5 by 7 with the green lock on. And now I'm working with the finished size and I have the outside lines of the design. The next thing that I wanted to do was get an inset line to create this row of circles. These could be piercing holes. It could be done with a needle piercing tool, or it could be done with a blade. And I'll add a layer here by clicking on the larger of the 2 green plus icons. Then I'm going to make an inset shadow. So with that selected, I click on the 4th icon from the right, which is shadow layer. And to do an inset shadow, you use a negative number, and you can make it any size that you want. I worked with a negative 0.1, which gave me an inset shadow big enough to add some tiny circles. So I'll select accept on that. And with that group of, or that inset shadow, I would like to change that to rhinestones. So I click on the 2nd icon from the bottom, the rhinestone tool, and in here I tried several different sizes, but I was trying to stay pretty close to the number of holes that she had in her original design, and I came up with this SS3 0.0530 inches, and then hit preview. Well, that's not what I wanted, so I'm going to cancel that because I have everything selected and I only want the inside selected. Let me show you on her default here. She had quite a few little circles in here that she wanted, and I noticed that they're all pretty close together. So I was trying to stay close to what she had there. And by clicking on this rhinestone thing, you can preview and you can see if that's what you like. If you want to change it, you can click on this and hit an arrow arrow key, and you'll notice as you do, then click on preview, that the spacing changes. So it doesn't have to be a bunch of mathematics. Andrea was wondering about, well, how do you do all the mathematics? But really, it's all a matter of what you want your design to look like. So I made these similar to what the other shape was, and 0.02 inches seemed to give me the right number of circles and a good spacing. I was looking at the points of the scallops, and I see that there are 2 circles pretty much at the bottom of the scallops. I tried several other methods, but I found that the rhinestone really works the best. So once you have it the way you want there, you can click on accept. The next thing that I wanted to do was work with the little holes here, and so I wanted to hide this green layer here. I'm going to send to the top and just hide it, because I want to select all of these rhinestones, and I'd like to create a shadow around them to create a little ruffled effect. And it wouldn't be a minus, but it would be a 0.0, maybe 3. What I'm looking for is the shadow here, and accept that. And if we look at this really closely, you'll see that now we have this little ruffled edge around the outside, which is what I was looking for, because in the original design she had this idea here of these little lace edge here. And I find by making a shadow around circles that I can get that lace edge. Now, again, the number could be different. You could maybe make it 0.04, but the larger that got, then the less distinct the ruffled or the lace edge would be. So once I have that, I'll send it to its own layer so that I can deal with that differently. So I think what remains now is just this little leaf motif here. Let me take one of hers, which is what I did. I just copied it from her collection. And I'll just hold Control, Shift, and click. I'll undo that. I'm going to go Control-C, copy. You can go Edit, Paste in place, and then with my arrow key, move that over. I'll move it over here. What I'd like to do is get it in position where I'd like it to be. Now, this is one of her questions. How do you position everything? Well, first thing I wanted to do was resize this shape to make sure that it would fit comfortably within the scalloped edge here. So once I've got it where I want it in the first scallop, then I'm going to go up to duplicate, and I'm going to back out of the zoom here so we can see what happens as I duplicate. I don't have any preconceived notion about how many times I'm going to have to duplicate this to get it all the way down. I'm going to reserve the corners for later because they're a little different, but the ones that are the same, I'm going to go to Edit and Duplicate. And here I don't need 10. It remembers I need, I think I need 1. Now I need 8. And I need only 1 column. Now the spacing, what you can do, you don't have to use the math. You can just hit that down arrow key until all of them are positioned where you want. Well, because everything was already mathematically done in like half-inch, quarter-inch increments, getting the spacing at 0.25 worked out pretty well. So I just click on Apply, and I'll send these to their own layer up at the top here. And I'd like to have this same set of shapes duplicated and brought over here to the other side. So I'm just going to hide everything using the eyeball here, hide all, and just leave that one row open because I have a kind of a faint shadow on the right side. I'm going to select all of these, Control, Shift, and click to duplicate them. And now hold the Control and arrow over to the other side, and then I want to mirror it so that they're facing the other way. Because I use the arrow key, I know they're exactly horizontal with each other, which I would like to maintain, and I know that the circles on the original design are horizontal, so these would be pretty much accurate in placement. Then I can open these up just to make sure that they're not too close to the edge. Maybe tap it over just a bit. So the next thing I want to do is I want to, again, I want to paste in place that same thing. But this time I want to rotate it and place it right where I want it to be. And we can zoom in a little just to make sure we've got it where we want it. And again, duplicate. And this time it's going to be one row and 5 across. And again, it's because the circles were all the same, it's a spacing of 0.25 will work. And I'll hide these others again because I don't want to duplicate them, but I do want to duplicate these. Control, Shift, click, and then hold Control and arrow down until I get down to the bottom. And in position where I want them to be. Make sure they're down far enough. I think they could go down just a little bit more. And again, I'm just eyeballing it. And once those are in place, then I can grab one of the corner ones. I'll hide these so I'm not duplicating them. Control, Shift, click, and just drag this over here. Now this one I want to rotate with the curved handles. I just click twice and hold the Control key and click a couple times so that I have my corner design there. Once I have that where I want, Control, Shift, click, then I can use my left arrow to take it across and mirror it so it's facing the other direction. And I'll hold the Shift and click both of these corners and Control, Shift, click, take them up to the top. And just use my arrow keys to get them exactly where I want them to be. If I show these, I can see better if they're right in the corners where I wanted them to be. And I wanted to flip those. Third icon from the left. And now I have the finished design where everything is symmetrical. If I am not happy with the placement of any of these embellishments, I can select them and move them, like these on the corners. Maybe I want them to go down a little bit, and maybe each one could move closer to the edge. And I just count and make sure they go the same distance. So that's pretty much it. You can, if you want, have the holes be joined to the ruffled edge if you want, or you can leave them all separate in case you want to make any adjustments. So I can't see the layer with holes too well because it's down below another layer, but you can change the position. It's hard to know which is which. But so we can see the little holes there a little bit better. If you wanted to join that layer with the one next to it, you would click on the little icon, the thumbnail on the layer, hold Shift and click another, and then you could join them. Or you can just leave them separate. Now if this set, it looks to me like this set of designs is a little bit close to the holes. I can select all of them and I can move them over. And I'll just zoom out a little bit. This side looks fine. This side might need to be moved over a little. You can just make sure I'm not moving those circles. That's the layer I want to be moving. There we go. So I'm just going to select these and move them over a little bit. So do we have any questions? And Andrea, did we answer your question on that?
I asked a question from when you were doing the holes or using the rhinestones. She asked, when you do the rhinestones, when they get cut, do you need to change it to a piercing tool, or will the offset of the blade be okay to cut?
You can use your offset blade. It is such a tiny hole that you won't probably notice the difference between the piercing tool, although the blade will do a little slice and a swivel, so to speak, whereas a piercing hole will probably be a little cleaner. You can use a needle tool if you have a hand piercing tool that will fit inside of your pen tool. You could do the piercing with a hand tool that way, and it works. I think what I did was I changed each layer to a different color so I could distinguish them a little bit better on this side as I'm working with it, to know which layer I should be hiding and working with. So this bottom layer we could label them. Don't need any of those. But when I select this, I see that this is the scalloped edge. So maybe I'll just call this lavender. And the next layer was the whole layer. And then the next layer, I think was so I'd like to change them all to different colors so I can at least tell what layer I'm working with. And again, after I'm all done, if I hide those circles, I can move these shapes down or away from the circles if they're too close. And that's a nice thing about not joining them. You can still rearrange everything pretty readily. So any other questions?
I think design-wise on that bottom row, you want to flip them. The bottom row of the floral design.
Oh, I didn't flip them already?
It looks like the berries or whatever are pointed up just like they are at the top. So
yeah, I was supposed to flip them.
yeah, there's no other questions that weren't answered yet. I don't see Andrea on, so may have to wait till she sees the recording.
So to flip, I just select them, click on flip. And with it zoomed in more, we can see a little more detail too here, how close they are to those circles. I don't want them to be too close, but I also don't want them to be extended too far out. And then if the corner one is not quite where it should be, then I can always select it and move it. Okay, so I think that's it.
If so,
So I didn't do any math, Andrea, when you see the recording.
okay.
What's that?
I was just going to say.
I didn't.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I don't see any other questions, and if people want to ask, now's the time to do it for this subject. So while we're waiting for questions there, let me just go ahead. I'll leave it on your screen for right now because the next question on the thread is from Terry. Oh wait, somebody just typed in. Okay, so Lee asks, would you do a print to draw the rhinestone pattern and not cut it all? What question?
Depends on which kind of paper I'm using. If I were using vellum, I would want to pierce them with a piercing tool. But I could do a print with even this little berry design here. You could do a print. I would use a pen instead. Now the little circles wouldn't necessarily be filled of the leaves and the circles. We could do maybe an inset shadow on the original one to make those be embossing fills, and it would look really nice embossed. But if you're using a pen, you could draw those, or you could use an embossing tip, and it would be very nice even if the shapes were open a little, because it's very tiny shape. So I would call the outer edge the cut line, and the next edge in, the ruffled edge, would also, it might be another layer, a different piece of paper layered on a scalloped edge, and then these holes would be pierced, and then I would use an embossing tool or a pen tool. But you could print that out too. You could join the circles into this layer, and you could draw on it and then make the scalloped edge the mat, and it would be very effective that way. I'm not sure what Andrea had in mind for this, but either way, you'd have a completely different look. If you did this in, let's say, foil, if you did this in aluminum, it could be very, very effective.